I woke up to the sound of my own phone vibrating on the nightstand, but when I reached for it, my hand hit cold wood and empty air where another body should have been. That was the first thing that felt wrong. The second thing was the silence. Not the normal quiet of a hotel room in the morning, but the kind of silence that feels staged, like a room that has been reset after something happened. The curtains were still drawn, and the air conditioning hummed softly, but the room felt hollow, like someone had taken the oxygen with them when they left. My head throbbed the way it does when you drink past the point of memory. My tongue felt like sandpaper. I tried to sit up and the whole world tilted for a second. I closed my eyes and breathed slowly, waiting for the dizziness to pass. When I opened them again, I knew I wasn't in my apartment back in Austin. I knew I wasn't at my friend's place either. The ceiling was different. The light was different. The smell was different. Hotels have a smell, even when they're clean. A mix of detergent, carpet, and somebody else's perfume that never fully leaves. I turned my head to the other side of the bed, and my stomach dropped. The sheets were flat, cold, undisturbed. She was gone. I said her name out loud, like the sound of it might make her answer from the bathroom. Nothing. I checked the time. 10:58 a.m. My first thought was that she'd run downstairs to grab coffee and was annoyed with me for passing out. That thought lasted exactly 3 seconds because her shoes were not by the door. Her sandals, she'd kicked them off the night before in the hallway and laughed about it, were gone. I sat up and scanned the room again, slower this time, forcing my brain to work through the hangover haze. Her tote bag wasn't on the chair. Her makeup bag wasn't on the bathroom counter. Her suitcase, the small hard-shell one with the scuffed corner, wasn't by the dresser. There was no way to explain all of that with coffee. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up too fast. The room spun again. I steadied myself against the wall and stared at the empty luggage rack like it was accusing me. Then I saw it. On the desk, near the hotel notepad and the little pen nobody ever uses, was a folded piece of paper. I walked over to it slowly, like if I moved too quickly the whole thing would disappear. My fingers were unsteady when I picked it up. 4 words, written in neat, careful handwriting. I went home. Sorry. No name. No explanation. No punctuation that made it feel softer. Just a sentence that ended my entire night and somehow left me holding the mess. For a few seconds, I simply stared at it, reading it again and again as if the meaning would change. It didn't. I grabbed my phone and opened our messages. The chat thread was still there, warm and familiar in a way that suddenly felt humiliating. My last texts were a disaster. A blurry selfie of us at the party with neon lights behind our heads. A voice note I didn't remember recording. A message that just said, "You're unreal," followed by 3 emojis. Her last message was from earlier that night. "Meet me by the bar in 5. Nothing after that. I called her. It rang until voicemail. I called again, immediately, because sometimes one missed call can be anything. Voicemail. I texted, "Hey, are you okay?" Then, "Where did you go?" Then, because my mind was filling in worst-case possibilities, I typed, "Did something happen last night?" The messages delivered, but nothing changed. No typing bubble, no response, nothing. I stood there in the middle of the room with that note in my hand, feeling a mix of panic and shame, because whatever this was, it was happening in complete silence, and I had no control over it. I tried to reconstruct the night like a detective working a case with missing evidence. I met her in early December at a coffee shop near my office. She was sitting alone, reading something on her phone, and she looked up when I walked past like she recognized me. She didn't. She just smiled in a way that made me stop anyway. We started talking. It was easy, like we'd done it before. She told me she was in town for work for a few months. She had a light accent that made her sound like she was holding back laughter even when she was serious. She asked me questions that felt specific, like she actually cared about the answers. I told her I'd spent most of my 20s working too much and pretending I didn't mind being alone. I told her I was the kind of guy who could talk confidently about anything except his own feelings. She laughed and said she liked that I was honest about it. We exchanged numbers. She texted me first. After that, things moved fast in a way that felt natural at the time. Dinner one night turned into walking for 2 hours. A weekend hangout turned into her staying over. A quiet Tuesday turned into us finding a dive bar with a live band and shouting lyrics into each other's ears like teenagers. There were moments that should have looked like warning signs, but they didn't. Not then. She didn't post photos of us, but plenty of people don't. She sometimes disappeared for a few hours and said she was busy with work calls. She once told me, half smiling, "My life is complicated," and then changed the subject before I could ask what she meant. I took it as flirtation. I took it as mystery. I took it as nothing. When she suggested we take a quick trip for New Year's, I said yes without thinking. It felt exciting. It felt like a story you'd want to be inside of. We flew out, checked into the hotel, and spent the first day acting like everything was simple. We ate too much. We walked around until our feet hurt. We took pictures we never posted. We joked about the fact that we were spending the last night of the year somewhere neither of us lived. On New Year's Eve, we went out. We found a crowded place with music that hit your chest and lights that made everyone look more beautiful than they were. We drank. We danced. We shouted conversations into each other's faces because the speakers were too loud for normal words. At midnight, she grabbed my face and kissed me like she was trying to erase the entire year with one moment. Fireworks went off outside. People screamed. Strangers hugged us. Everything felt perfect. And then, my memory broke. I remember stumbling in the hallway of the hotel. I remember her laughing and telling me to keep my voice down. I remember the elevator doors closing. I remember her hand in mine. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed. And then there was nothing until I opened my eyes to an empty room and a note that felt like it had been written by a stranger. I looked at the note again, then at the empty luggage rack, then back at my phone. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't only from the hangover anymore. It was the feeling that she didn't just leave. It was the feeling that she left in a hurry, and she left on purpose, and she left because something had caught up with her. I tried calling again. Voicemail. I paced the room. I checked the hallway. I checked with the front desk, pretending I was casual, pretending it was normal to ask if someone checked out early. The clerk gave me that polite, professional look that says, "I can't tell you anything," and I realized how alone I was in this. When I went back upstairs, I sat on the bed with my phone in my hand and stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. I kept refreshing the chat like I could force a reply with enough pressure. Then, late that night, when the sky outside the window had gone completely black again, my phone lit up. Her name appeared on the screen. Relief surged through me so hard I almost laughed, and I answered instantly. "Hey!" A man's voice cut through the line, low and sharp. "Listen to me," he said. "Stay away from my wife." For a few seconds after he said it, I genuinely thought I had misheard him. The words did not fit into any version of reality my brain was able to access. "Stay away from my wife." I blinked like the sentence would rearrange itself into something that made sense. "I think you have the wrong number," I said automatically, because that was the only response I could find. "I don't," he replied, calm in a way that was worse than shouting. "I know exactly who you are." My throat felt tight. "Who is this?" "You don't need to know who I am. You just need to understand that if I see you near her again, you're going to regret it." The line went dead. I stayed there with the phone pressed to my ear long after the call had ended, listening to the empty signal. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. Wife. The word bounced around my head like it had nowhere to land. I tried calling the number back immediately. It went straight to an error message. I tried again. Same thing. I opened our chat again like that would somehow explain what just happened. Her profile picture was still there. The same photo she had used for weeks. A simple picture of her sitting outside somewhere, sunlight on her face, looking like a person with nothing to hide. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed with the lights off, staring at nothing, replaying every moment I had spent with her over the past month. And the more I thought about it, the more small details began to feel different. At the time, they had felt normal, harmless. Now they felt like clues that had been sitting in plain sight. She never talked about where she lived in detail. She would say things like, "I'm staying near downtown," but never a street name. She always met me somewhere. Coffee shops, restaurants, bars, my place. She had been to my apartment many times. I had never been to hers. That had never bothered me before. It felt casual, unimportant. Now it felt intentional. She kept her phone face down on tables. I thought it was polite. I thought it meant she was focused on me. Sometimes it would light up and vibrate, and she would glance at it quickly before flipping it over again. Once, I remember asking jokingly, "Secret life?" She smiled and said, "You don't want to know," in a playful tone that made it sound like a flirtatious comment. I laughed. Now that sentence felt like something else entirely. There were moments when she would disappear for an hour or two during the day, and then text me like nothing happened. "Sorry, got pulled into work stuff." I never questioned it. People have jobs. People get busy. Once, we were sitting on my couch late at night watching something neither of us was really paying attention to. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her expression changed for half a second, and then she declined the call. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just annoying." I didn't push. I remember another moment standing outside a restaurant after dinner when she hugged me longer than usual before getting into her rideshare. She pulled back and looked at me in a way that felt heavy for no reason. "If things ever get weird," she said, "just know I didn't plan for it to be like that." I thought she was being dramatic. I kissed her and told her to stop overthinking. Now those words sat in my memory like a warning I had completely missed. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I had only ever seen the version of her she wanted me to see, the version that laughed easily, the version that stayed over at my place, the version that talked about music and travel and random childhood memories. But I had never seen where she went when she left. I had never seen the rest of her life. And somehow, I had been perfectly comfortable with that. I tried to convince myself the man on the phone had to be lying. There had to be another explanation. Maybe he was jealous. Maybe he was obsessed. Maybe he was someone from her past trying to cause problems. But the certainty in his voice was impossible to ignore. He had not sounded confused. He had sounded informed, like he knew exactly who I was and exactly how I fit into whatever this was. That was what scared me. Not the threat, the knowledge. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel in a fog. I did not even ask for the receipt. I just wanted to leave. On the drive back to the airport, I kept replaying the last week in my head. There was a moment at the hotel bar on the first night of the trip that came back to me suddenly. We had been sitting next to each other, sharing fries and laughing at something stupid. I had gone to the restroom. When I came back, she was staring at her phone with a look I had never seen before. Tense, not scared, not surprised, just tense. She locked the screen quickly when she saw me and smiled like nothing was wrong. "Everything good?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Just work nonsense." I had believed her without hesitation. I remembered another moment from earlier in December. We had been walking downtown when she stopped suddenly and turned us in the opposite direction. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. "I just don't feel like going that way." I laughed and told her she was weird. She squeezed my hand and changed the subject. I had thought she was spontaneous. Now it felt like she was avoiding something, or someone. On the flight home, my head hurt in a way that had nothing to do with alcohol anymore. Every memory felt like it had been edited. Like I was rewatching a movie where the plot twist had already happened, and now all the earlier scenes suddenly made sense in a way they never did before. And the worst part was realizing that I had never once asked the questions that would have exposed any of this. Where do you live? Who do you live with? Why do you always meet me instead of the other way around? I never asked because I never felt like I needed to. She made it easy not to. She made me feel like the present moment was enough. By the time I landed, my confusion had turned into something heavier. Not anger, not fear. A slow, uncomfortable realization that I had been allowed into a life that was never fully open to me. And I still did not know why. When I turned my phone back on after the flight, I checked our chat again. Still nothing. No reply, no explanation. Just silence that felt deliberate now, not accidental. I stared at her name on the screen and felt something I did not want to admit. I felt like I had been selected, like she had chosen me very carefully for something I did not understand. On the drive back from the airport, I kept trying to force my memory to give me something useful from that night, but it was like trying to grab smoke with my hands. There was a point where everything simply stopped. I remembered the music. I remembered her pulling me through the crowd by the wrist because I was moving too slowly. I remembered the way she kept laughing at how drunk I was getting, like she found it endearing and slightly embarrassing at the same time. I remembered the countdown. I remembered the kiss when midnight hit. I remembered her face close to mine, lit by fireworks outside the windows of the bar. And then my memory started to break into fragments. I remembered standing outside the venue while she waited for a ride. I remembered leaning against a wall and feeling the world tilt slightly. I remembered her telling me to focus and stop being dramatic. She had that half smile on her face, the one she used when she thought I was overdoing something. Then I remembered being in the hotel elevator. She was holding my hand. I could feel the warmth of her fingers. I remembered leaning my forehead against the mirror inside the elevator and laughing at my own reflection. Then there was the hallway. I remembered her saying, "Shh, you're too loud," and laughing. I remembered sitting on the edge of the bed. And then nothing. The gap was not gradual. It was like someone had cut the film. I tried to tell myself that it was just alcohol. People black out. It happens. That was a simple explanation. But the more I thought about it, the less simple it felt. Because I had been drunk before, many times. I had never lost an entire sequence of events so cleanly. There were no blurry images, no flashes, no half memories, just a hard stop. I tried to remember if she had been drinking as much as I was. She hadn't. I could see that clearly now. She had been drinking, but slowly, carefully. She never seemed out of control. She never slurred her words. She never stumbled. She had been the one guiding me through the crowd, the one keeping track of the ride, the one making sure I got back to the hotel. I remembered something else suddenly. In the elevator, I had asked her for my phone. She had taken it from my hand earlier because I almost dropped it on the dance floor. I remembered asking for it back. I did not remember her giving it to me. That detail hit me in a way I could not explain. Because when I woke up, my phone had been neatly placed on the nightstand. Charging. I had assumed I put it there. Now I wasn't sure. The more I replayed that night, the more a quiet, uncomfortable thought started to form. What if I hadn't just passed out? What if I had been helped into not remembering? The idea felt paranoid, dramatic, unfair. But I could not shake it, because the timing of everything felt too precise. I went from laughing in a hallway to waking up alone with no memory of anything in between. And she had been completely fine, clear, steady, in control. I tried to push the thought away, but it kept coming back. I remembered waking up in the middle of the night for a few seconds, just a vague sensation. I remembered seeing the bathroom light on through half-closed eyes. I remembered hearing the sound of water running. I had assumed she was brushing her teeth or taking a shower. I had rolled over and gone back to sleep. Now that moment felt different. What if that was when she was packing? What if she was already preparing to leave while I was barely conscious? The image of her moving quietly around the room while I slept made my stomach tighten. Not because she left, but because she left without waking me, without saying goodbye, without even trying. That meant she did not want a conversation. She did not want questions. She wanted distance. I started thinking about the way she had acted during the trip in general. She had been affectionate, relaxed, laughing. But now, looking back, there was something underneath it. A constant awareness. Like she was always checking something in the background that I could not see. At the hotel bar on the first night, when I came back from the restroom and she was staring at her phone with that tense expression, I remembered something else. Her hand had been shaking slightly. I had asked if she was cold. She had said, "No, I'm fine," and slipped the phone into her bag quickly. I remembered another moment earlier that evening. We had been walking down the hallway toward our room when she stopped suddenly and looked behind us. "What?" I had asked. "Nothing," she said. "I thought I heard something." I had joked that she was paranoid. She did not laugh. At the time, it had felt like nothing. Now, it felt like she had been expecting something. Or someone. I started to feel something I had not felt before. Not confusion, not anger. Fear. Because if she had been hiding something from me, that was one thing. But if she had been hiding something from someone else, and that someone else knew about me, that was different. That meant I had stepped into a situation I did not understand. And the man on the phone had not sounded surprised. He had sounded prepared. Like he had known this moment would happen eventually. Like he had been waiting for it. The more I thought about it, the more one detail refused to leave my mind. The photo in the email, the one taken from a distance at the party. Someone had been watching us, not by accident, not randomly, deliberately, and that meant that whoever that man was, he had not just found out about me after she went home. He had known before, which meant she had known he might know, which meant she had taken me on that trip anyway. And that thought made my chest feel tight in a way I did not like, because it raised a question I had not considered yet. What if she didn't take me on that trip because she wanted to celebrate New Year's with me? What if she took me because she knew it was the last time she could? What if that entire night had been a goodbye that I was too drunk to recognize? And if that was true, then why? Why me? Why now? Why risk all of this just to disappear without a word? I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for several minutes without moving. The silence inside the car felt heavy, like the silence in the hotel room that morning. I realized something I had not wanted to admit. I did not feel like I had been lied to. I felt like I had been used. But I still did not know for what. When I finally went back to my apartment, I did not go inside right away. I sat in the car in the parking lot with the engine off, staring at the building like it belonged to someone else. The place suddenly felt exposed in a way it never had before. Ordinary things felt suspicious. Windows, doorways, people walking past without looking at me. I kept hearing the man's voice in my head. "I know where you live." He had said it calmly, without emotion. Not as a threat meant to scare me, but as a fact. That was what bothered me. He had not sounded angry. He had sounded certain. I went upstairs, grabbed a backpack, and started throwing things into it without thinking too much about what I was taking. Clothes, charger, laptop, a few random things from the bathroom. I left most of everything else where it was. I did not want to sleep there that night. I drove straight to my friend Mark's place and told him everything from the beginning. He listened quietly, not interrupting, just nodding occasionally like he was trying to piece it together himself. When I finished, he leaned back on his couch and stared at the ceiling. "Okay," he said slowly. Either you dated a married woman and didn't know it, or you're in the middle of something way stranger. I don't even know which one I'd prefer, I said. He asked to see the note. I handed it to him. He read it and handed it back without comment. Then he asked to see the photo from the email. I showed him. He zoomed in on the background and whistled quietly. "That's not random," he said. "Someone took this on purpose." That was the first time someone else said it out loud, and it made my stomach drop again. Someone had been watching us, not casually, not accidentally, deliberately. I tried to think of anyone from the party who might have recognized me, anyone who might have been following us. Nothing came to mind. We had been just two people in a crowd, but the angle of the photo made it clear the person taking it had been standing still, focused, waiting for the right moment. Mark looked at me and said something that stuck. "Have you tried searching her name?" I had not. I don't know why I hadn't. Maybe because I was afraid of what I would find. I opened my laptop and typed her full name into a search bar. At first, nothing obvious came up. A few social profiles, a LinkedIn page that matched what she told me about her job, photos of her at events, conferences, group pictures with coworkers. Everything looked normal. Then Mark pointed at something on the side of the screen. "Images," he said. "Click that." I did, and there it was. A photo from about a year ago at what looked like a charity event. She was standing next to a man, both of them dressed formally, smiling at the camera. His hand was on her back. Her hand was on his chest. They were wearing wedding rings. My heart dropped so hard I felt it physically. I stared at the image, zoomed in, zoomed out, zoomed in again. It was her, no doubt. And the man next to her looked very similar to the silhouette I had seen reflected in the television screen in her recent social media photo. I clicked on the article attached to the image. It mentioned her by name. It mentioned him by name. It called them husband and wife. I leaned back in the chair and covered my face with my hands. I did not feel anger first. I felt stupid, because suddenly everything made sense in a way that hurt. She never took me to her place because she had a home with someone else. She kept her phone face down because she was hiding notifications from him. She avoided certain streets because she did not want to run into someone who knew her. She disappeared for hours because she was going back to her real life. And I had walked through all of it smiling, thinking I was part of something exciting and spontaneous. Mark said, "Man, I'm sorry." I nodded, still staring at the screen. But something about it still did not feel complete. Because if she was simply cheating on her husband, this could have ended 100 different ways that did not involve an anonymous photo, a threatening call, and her disappearing before I woke up. This felt bigger than just an affair. This felt like something had reached a breaking point. I scrolled through more images. There were more photos of them together at events, smiling, looking comfortable, looking like a normal married couple. Then I found something else, a photo from several months ago at a different event. She was standing with a group of people, and in the background, half out of frame, I saw a face that made my skin crawl. I had seen him before, not in person, but in the reflection of the television screen in her recent post. The same man. Which meant he had been around her publicly for a long time. Which meant he was not some distant, uninvolved husband. He was present, very present, and somehow, he had known about me. I checked the timestamp on the email with the photo from the party. It had been sent only a few hours after midnight, which meant whoever took that photo had sent it to me almost immediately, like they wanted me to know, like they wanted to make sure I saw it. I looked at Mark and said, "Why send it to me?" He shrugged. "Maybe to scare you, maybe to warn you, maybe to prove something." I shook my head. But if he already called me, why send a photo too? We sat there in silence for a while. Then a new thought hit me. What if she didn't leave because she wanted to? Mark looked at me. What do you mean? What if she left because he found out right then? The timeline started lining up in a way that made my chest feel tight again. We were at the party. Someone was watching. Someone took a photo. That photo was sent to him. He called her. She saw it. She panicked. She got me back to the hotel, waited for me to pass out, packed her things, left before I woke up. And then he called me from her phone. The more I said it out loud, the more it felt possible. Not confirmed, but possible. Which meant the entire morning I had spent confused in that hotel room had been happening while she was dealing with a crisis I knew nothing about. And the note she left suddenly felt different. Not casual, not careless, desperate. I went home, sorry. Not, I wanted to. I went home, like she had no choice. And that was when the situation shifted in my head from embarrassment to something much darker. Because if she had been caught, and he had been watching, and he had known exactly where I lived, then I had never been as invisible in this story as I thought. I had been visible the entire time, and I had no idea who had been looking at me.